are talking Darkworld, a 2006 movie directed by David Palmieri and stars Gina Valona as Fallon. Now, this is obviously a kind of rip-off, if you want to call it that, of Underworld, or at least it's trying to really kind of ride the coattails of the Underworld franchise. Just look at that cover. This is the best thing about this movie, this cover, because let me tell you, this one was a tough watch. Let me tell you the story, however. Fallon is a burglar that gets killed in a botched robbery. However, her father was in league with the devil, and quite coincidentally, he ultimately has to pay for his transgressions, and decides he's going to give the soul of his daughter to this kind of demonic fellow, and such. Fallon is then resurrected to become like a demon. She has no memory of whatever it is she's doing, and ultimately has to kind of like go on various missions. However, one mission involves killing her sister, and while she doesn't have any memory of that, while she is attempting to do that, she does start to remember and ultimately becomes one of the good guys, rebelling against her demonic captors, so to speak, and striking out on her own. What will happen? Well, you have to watch the movie to find out. The movie sounds relatively reasonable, doesn't it, in regards to the kind of plot? And I will say, you know, it's for a kind of a somewhat of a B-movie style horror film. The plot is relatively intriguing, to be fair. At least the outline of it. The synopsis is intriguing. Maybe the way it's executed is not. But what else can I say that maybe worked in this movie's favour? The movie is incredibly cheap, but there were a couple of things that I did like. Some of them, we had like a range of bad guys. They almost have like a squad of different kind of demons that end up going after Fallon. And there was two that were of note to me. There's like a big hulking sort of like demonic looking one that looks like he was a member of GWAR. And although the actual kind of the makeup and the costume effect is very cheap, I still kind of liked it for a kind of like, it almost looks like a Power Rangers bad guy. It was kind of still quite fun. And then we have this kind of like this blonde, cheerleader-y type demonette female. And she's obviously super attractive. And she says a line like, along the lines of, "Oh, I'm only ugly on the inside," which I thought was quite a neat line. And there were a couple of lines where I thought it was quite good. In some, just the odd line here and there that I thought was quite kind of well written. But that's kind of it, if we're being honest. To be honest, this movie is incredibly cheap. It's a real amateur production. It feels like it was put together for probably no more than a couple of $1,000s. The special effects are incredibly cheap. And I think although some of them, like I've said, you can kind of enjoy on a kind of weird, ironic level, some of the visual effects here are just, you know, I think those ones, they're the ones where it really falls apart. Some of the kind of the makeup effects, Fallon herself actually ends up having horns and stuff, and it really doesn't look good. But some of the other ones aren't as bad, to be fair. But some of the digital effects are really bad. It's one of those cases where they would have been better off just not having digital effects at all and having it without. I think sometimes when people, I've got digital effects software, let's kind of like put glowing eyes on things, and it just ends up becoming really cheap looking because of that. Sometimes less is more. The acting is appalling, pretty much, from across the board. Everyone really here is not the best thespian you've ever seen, and let me just tell you that, to be, you know, somewhat kind of diplomatic whilst discussing that. The story itself, I like the synopsis, but it ends up becoming a bit of a bore. They're just trapped in this house with some random guy who seems to inject themselves into their kind of like their plight for no real reason, and it's just one sort of demonic attack after another. So the plot ends up having a spark of what may well be an interesting premise to be a little bit of a kind of hammy, typical kind of like money-saving plot at the end of the day. This film is a really cheap movie. I mean, I like B movies. I like sometimes lower budget movies. And I think if you have a good idea, good characters, you know, interesting performances and things like that, you can kind of sometimes not worry so much that the movie can't afford to do things. This one, unfortunately, doesn't really have any of that. Just a couple of very small moments that I liked. But there you go, it's not really... There's plenty of like attractive women in it. There's a bit of nudity in it. There's not a hell of a lot of gore in it. But yeah, it really isn't anything to write home about. I'm going to be honest with you. This one is a 2 out of 10. Just, what, you know, not a 1 out of 10 purely for a couple of moments that I thought were you know, just fleetingly good. But 2 out of 10 is the best I'm doing on that one. Have you seen DARKWORLD? Don't be fooled by the cover. That's the lesson of this movie. Don't be fooled in by a cool looking cover. I should know this by now. I've got plenty of movies that they got a cool looking cover. 2 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.